Hi, I'm Katitovah, a fundamentalist escapee and YouTuber. In honor of Black History Month, I am re-releasing my KKK history series. In the current political climate, real American history matters more than ever before. Please share this video far and wide. Thank you.
Hi, Shalom. This video contains mentions of Confederate history and ideology as well as racism. Viewer discretion is advised. All right, so this is part 4 of my KKK history series. And if you haven't seen the rest of the series, I highly recommend going back and watching at least parts 1 and 2, which I will link down below. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the false narrative of the lost cause. The more I learn about American history, the more I come to understand that KKK ideology is horrifically mainstream. And white people often don't see it because we were never taught to look for it. So I'm going to keep adding videos to this series as I come across things that make my hackles go up. As I mentioned earlier in the series, the KKK was started by disillusioned Confederate soldiers who were like, well, now what do we do? I've said it before and I'll say it again, cults and extremism usually stem from someone trying to solve a legitimate problem or meet a legitimate need. Humans are communal creatures. For the most part, we are hardwired to want connection with other people. That is not a bad thing in itself, but unfortunately, history is full of examples where people trying to meet that need went horribly wrong. I'm going to share a few basic bullet points of this lost cause narrative. My guess is you've probably heard snippets of this here and there, but like I said, this is so much more mainstream than people think. So it's imperative that we talk about it. All right, here we go. Myth number 1. Succession had little to nothing to do with the institution of slavery. Yeah, I think we consider that myth busted. Myth number 2. The Civil War was about states' rights. The Confederacy was the true America, and the Union was the traitor. I have opinions about that, to put it nicely. Myth number 3. The Confederacy was only defeated because the North had a numerical advantage. Yeah, whatever. When it's all laid out point blank like this, you can see how present day supremacy was really fueled by the aftermath of the Civil War. A big part of the lost cause narrative revolved around Nathan Bedford Forrest, founder of the KKK. He became sort of a saint-like figure in the South. Now, Forrest was unique to other slave owners in that he was what you could call a self-made man. Most slave owners acquired their slaves and other assets through inheritance, and you had to be wealthy to have slaves. I abhor the idea of trying to put a price on human lives, but this is important to understand because slavery was the backbone of America's economy. The cost of an average healthy male slave would have been about $10,000 US in 2014. Now, statistically, the number of slave owners was actually quite small compared to the general population, but as we've seen time and time again, having money means you can control the narrative and spit out propaganda. During my research for this video, I came across a saying that feels very apropos. A lie can get around the world twice before the truth even ties its shoes. In part 2, I talked about the film Birth of a Nation. And as a refresher, Birth of a Nation is a horribly racist silent film that came out in 1914. This film was responsible for the stereotype of Black men assaulting white women. I watched a documentary on it as part of my research, and it contained actual clips from the film. If this is something you're interested in for research purposes, please do not pull it up on YouTube. We do not need to give that bullshit any more views. All right, so today we talk a lot about representation, and the two biggest influences on Western culture are the sports and entertainment industries. The problem with Birth of a Nation was that the filming technology was state of the art for the time. I actually thought it had come out a lot later, toward the end of the silent film era. So if this was your first experience going to a movie theater, it would leave quite an impression on you, regardless of the subject matter. Also, I need to clarify something that I mentioned in part 2. I did not clearly communicate that Birth of a Nation was done with white actors in blackface makeup. The black character didn't even look human, which makes the whole thing even more horrifying. Unfortunately, Birth of a Nation was only the beginning of supremacy in media control. The film Gone with the Wind came out in 1939, based on the book by Margaret Mitchell. Now, that film was not done in blackface. Black characters were portrayed by black actors. And in the interest of full transparency, I have not read the book or seen the film in full. I tried as part of my research, but I just got so pissed. The way the black characters talk was so exaggerated, I couldn't even really understand it, both in the book and the movie. It was so ridiculous. I can't even. Black actors would take these roles because it was pretty much the only film work they could get. One of the black actresses in Gone with the Wind got really fed up with this and barely did any acting after that. Another big pop culture influence was the show Dukes of Hazzard, which ran from 1979 to 1985. I had never heard of this show, so I had to Google it, and I was horrified. Why a network would pick up this show is beyond me. And I was also horrified at how recent this show was. This show ended only a few years before I was born. And this show is where the idea of calling cutoff shorts Daisy Dukes comes from. I mean, I grew up calling cutoffs Daisy Dukes because that's just what people called them. Lots of sayings have horribly racist origins, but these sayings stick around because genuinely decent people keep saying them, not knowing where they come from. Another example is the American picnic wear brand Dixie, which is short for Dixieland, which is a slang term for the Confederate States. The country group, formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, officially dropped the word Dixie from their name a while ago. While we're on this subject, I'm going to tell you what the saying "kick the bucket" actually means. Back in the day, criminals or alleged criminals were executed by hanging, and the person was typically standing on an overturned bucket. Strangulation can be horribly painful, so sometimes the person would kick the bucket to put themselves out of their misery. And we all know that Black people were executed in disproportionate numbers. But this is such a normal saying in modern culture. Even Black people use this saying because nobody knows where it comes from. I mean, hell, Morgan Freeman was in the film The Bucket List. And to clarify, I'm not knocking the concept of a list of things you want to do in life. The concept is great, but we need to call it something else. I call mine my master to-do list, for instance. So, as we all know, racial tensions were skyrocketing in the 60s. Another way to look at this is that Black people had come a long way in the last century, and supremacists were afraid of losing ground. So they rigged up a Civil War centennial celebration commemorating the inauguration of Jefferson Davis, the first and only president of the Confederacy. I've lost count of how many times I've thought or said, "Are you freaking kidding me?" during my research for this series. Unfortunately, the lost cause narrative is still alive and well. I could go on forever about all the Confederate monuments that still exist today. A statue of Forrest got stolen and was replaced in 2015 as a response to the start of the Black Lives Matter movement. And a statue of General Lee was torn down in 2017, only 8 years before the filming of this video. All right, that is a wrap on part 4. This video was written and produced by me, Katitovah, and my sources will be listed down below. All right, thanks so much for watching. Bye. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a huge favor and hit the thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. Like you try. Bye.